never know when I coming and when I'm not coming. All right. So we're here today to say a few things about spiritual life, live from the basis of singlehood. Before we enter into our discussion about it, how many of you here are here more so to find out how to get married? Because I need to know how I am to approach you about this matter. There are some of you who are here who are not particularly at this juncture in your life seeking the spiritual way of life that is most effective for a single person. You are here looking for some tips and clues on how you can get out of the single life and into the life of relationship. And then your proposition is that from there you will continue your spiritual journey. And so the conversation has to be somehow adapted to meet the interests of both parties. But I must say, quite frankly, that the individual who is in transition, who is looking for a way to cope with being single until they can become married, that's a very different issue. That's a very different proposition here. Because when you are single and you're trying to find ways to cope with that ordeal until you are able to become married, then that is what takes up all your energy. The energy that is to be used for the spiritual way of life gets co-opted. The creativity gets co-opted and assigned the task of how do I function in this interim. And so you tend to spend all of your time and energy, all your creativity in trying to cope with the ordeal of being single while awaiting your soulmate, so forth and so on. And that's a very different matter. Usually for you, spiritual life does not happen. Your spiritual life is made secondary to the urgency of relationship with another human being. Your spiritual life is usually postponed in that moment, really not entered into seriously, truly. There's always some reservation of energy in you. And that makes sense because your goal is not the spiritual goal. Your goal is a very human goal. Your goal is the relationship with someone else. And that has very little to do with the spiritual ordeal, the spiritual goal. So for you, you will have to reflect, contemplate it, think about it, really look at it again. The pursuit of a mate is not sadhana. The pursuit of a man or woman for purposes of making relationship with them, there's nothing inherently spiritual about that. Every species does it. Every ordinary man and woman does it. There's nothing unique about that at all. Certainly not enough for you to claim it as being somehow spiritual in the sense that I use the word. So you must be clear about your goal when you talk about your spiritual goal in your condition of being single. Now if, on the other hand, you have looked at your situation in life and find that you are single, in fact, and you have accepted that, how many of you have accepted it? No fooling. No kidding. accepted it as a part of your reality for now, at least. And are prepared to make the best out of that reality as it relates to the spiritual journey. Then a whole different kind of possibility becomes available, you see. Actually, it's nothing to lament about. You've missed nothing. The happiness that you were looking for in relationship is still available. All of the challenges that you were hoping to find in relationship that would serve you spiritually is also available. And even for those of us who are married, if you are married, that doesn't mean that you are in any way, shape, form, or fashion necessarily involved in a spiritual process. There are literally millions of people who are married who are going straight to hell and exhibit no qualities or signs of any kind of spiritual development. So again, I don't want you to think that by simply getting married, somehow you will automatically enter into the spiritual zone. That is a myth. Even when you get married, unless you got married with the conscious and deliberate intention of making that marriage serve you in your spiritual development, then you simply derive no benefit from such a marriage as such. Certainly as it relates to spiritual development. It's just a marriage. It's just an ordinary, typical thing. You know, all kinds of people does it all the time. So simply by virtue of getting married, do not arrogate to yourself any kind of status, spiritual status. There's nothing that comes with that at all. Even the married life, the life of a householder, as we call it, is useful only if you have entered into it with the clear intention of making it serve in your spiritual attainment. And if you have not entered into your marriage with that express purpose and intention, then you have no advantage from being married at all. So we have to get clear about a lot of things when we begin to contrast the different life states and what role they play in the whole overall spiritual quest. Maharaji and Dera had a whole separate part of Dera that was set aside just for the Sadhus. You write Sadhu. I'm lazy. S-A-D, how you spell it, Bilal? S-A-D-H-U. Sadhu. H-U. Sadhu. So the Dera was split into two groups, basically, both seekers. There were the householder seekers, and then there were the non-householder seekers, the sadhus, the sahus. And yet I tell you they were the same, in spite of the differences in their relationship status. Their goals were absolutely the same. Absolutely the same. So the tradition of the sadhu is an ancient one. So those of you who are single, who will and are serious about your spiritual development, who are not simply single by default, because most of you, unfortunately, are single by default. You don't have any option. At least many of the women here. The men have some option. But they also usually have some kind of deficit that prohibits them from entering into a married life, and they want to live a married life, but they are still too immature, so forth and so on. But the true householder and the sadhu, the true single person pursuing God realization, are one and the same. The biggest difference between the householder and the sadhu is that the the householder practices within the context of his or her family. The Sadhu practice within the context of the family of man. That's about it. Instead of being governed by the vows that are given at the time of marriage, the Sadhu is governed by a whole different set of vows and lives on the basis of an entirely different code. The Sadhu is the male-female who lives a life on the basis of a code. They have a kind of code of honor, if you will. And of course, there's many, many examples of the Sadhu codes, and it varies across culture. The Bodhisattva, the way of the samurai in Asia, Cholin, and so forth and so on. All of these are codes, aren't they? And you must be familiar a little bit with it. That these men and women who are living on the basis of a great code, they live life very differently, don't they? Imagine the life of a samurai. It is dedicated to something, isn't it? So the question becomes, what does the single person dedicate their life to? If you are single and you're not living at the level of a code, and if you have not dedicated yourself to the spiritual ideal most radically, then you're just in a kind of purgatory, aren't you? That's all. So today we will discuss what are the spiritual possibilities for the single person. The kind of spiritual life that is available to them. And it is a beautiful, beautiful life. Not one iota less beautiful than the life of a household. In fact, when you look throughout history, you will find that so many of the great mystics, saints, and sages have come out of that tradition. There have been great saints and sages that have come out of both traditions, no doubt about it. But it seems our poets have celebrated the life and living of those who had come from the tradition of the Sadhu. Because they have lived the heroic life in the true sense of the word. True sense of the word. Very heroic way of living. Life lived at the level of honor, commitment, dedication to a code. To a code. Those of you who are students of Zen and all of these other things, you must have come across the tale of the Cholin priest. It's a beautiful story, isn't it? Of a life lived at the level of dedication to the welfare and the uplift of humanity. So when you're single, you see, you're married to humanity. The whole of humanity becomes your family. And you're able to make sacrifices for humanity, just like the married person makes sacrifice for their wives, husbands, children, so forth and so on. But the quality is not different. And so you will hear tales and read beautiful stories about these wandering sadhus and fakirs, sannyasins, samurais, so forth and so on. Just moving through life. Fulfilling their obligations and duty toward every sentient being. Where everybody becomes wife, everybody becomes husband, and everybody becomes son, and everybody becomes daughter. And they perform all of those responsibilities with no attachment. With no attachment. It is a profound way of living. I have called it the life of a hero, because there's that heroic dimension to it. They are usually very mysterious people, aren't they? Very mysterious. There's a mystery, a great mystery that surrounds them. Like the ninjas and so forth and so on. Very mysterious people. They have that kind of quality because they are mystics. And mystics are related to mystery, aren't they? So one of the possibilities that is available uniquely to those who are single is the possibility of living their life on the basis of Dhamma, without any compromise and without any restrictions. Those of us who are married tend to practice Dhamma pretty much within the confines and the context of our close, intimate relationships. You don't tend to practice love and all of this with your neighbor children, just your children. But it's still helpful. But the Sadhu, the single person, is not limited as such. They can practice this with all sentient beings. So let us consider today, together, what are the spiritual possibilities that you can fulfill in your life from the posture of being single. Now, just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding here, I want you to feel free to put forth your question. That's why I'm here. But it's important that you become very clear about it. The way of the Sadhu is not by default. You don't decide to become a Sadhu just because you can't get married. That's a very wrong approach. Then you are a reluctant Sadhu. You understand? Not Sadhu by choice. You've simply found yourself in a situation in your life where you're not able to enter into relationships, and so you say, well, shit, I might as well do something. Right? That's not what I'm talking about. You have to be careful with you rascals. Those who chose the way of the Sadhu could have gotten married. It was their choice. It was their choice. It wasn't a situation by default at all. How many of you who are here, who are single, even if somebody proposed to you tonight, would turn it down? Even if you found somebody that you, oh God, I got a lot of denial to work with in this room, huh? How many think they just lying? How many think they just sitting here telling a straight up lie? That if somebody proposed tonight, they'll drop this just like a hot potato. But seriously, even if you are able to get married, have all of that, would you truly prefer to be single? And you need not answer that now, but that is what you must deal with. First, find that out. No fooling. No kidding. Really look into that. Because to live the life of the Sadhu, to live the life of the hero, the life of the Bodhisattva, cannot be lived from a lesser state of sincerity, genuineness. You must truly cede the possibilities of both. And looking at both possibilities, choose that of the Sadhu. Just like there are those who have gotten married, we got married because we saw marriage as a superior way to live the rest of our life as opposed to being single. It wasn't that you couldn't remain single, you could have remained single. It was a choice. You met someone, and you saw that with this someone, I am able to move my life to a whole different level of meaningfulness, purpose, quality, satisfaction, so forth and so on. And you chose to give up your singlehood in that moment. It was a choice. It wasn't hopefully a shotgun wedding, where you were forced by other extenuating circumstances to enter into matrimony. Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? A lot of people are forced into relationship, into marriage. Sometimes they're forced for economic reasons. They don't make enough money independently to live the kind of level of lifestyle that they want for themselves. And so they decide to enter a relationship to augment their income, double the financial base, and so forth and so on. Very materialistically motivated to enter into relationships. And their relationships, you see, are limited in their quality. There are those who have chosen to enter into a relationship fundamentally because they cannot handle the loneliness of not being in one. So out of their psychological weakness, they enter into a relationship. Out of boredom, fear, so forth and so on. Incapable of living alone, they seek relationship. Some move into them out of sheer fantasy, infatuation, hormones. They're tired of dating for sex and it's getting too expensive for them and so forth and so on. So there's all kinds of reasons that people move into marriage. And of those reasons, very few people have really gotten married as a part of sadhana. That almost never happens, certainly here in the West. Very few of us got married because our guru said get married. It's a part of sadhana. One of the unique things about Maharaji was that, and I don't know, I can't speak for every disciple of Maharaji, and you all should be reminded on these occasions when I am saying something and attributing it to Maharaji, I'm simply saying and speaking from my own experience. But coming to the path as a young person, and one of the ways in which I am grateful that Maharaji handled me is that he did not immediately respond to my request for initiation and so forth and so on because I was so young. And he reminded me, go to school, got to finish your education, get married and do it, set up a foundation. But it was really that kind of sober advice that even when it was time to get married, I was looking at marriage very, very differently. You see, I wasn't simply trying to get out of my mama's house or get and solve my sexual needs on a permanent basis. Now I know that here's my woman, and every other day I know where I need to go and do my thing. You understand? It wasn't like that. I really understood that this was a part of the path. It was necessary, useful. Like vegetarianism and teetotalism and all those other things. It was preparation. It was a part of the preparation that was necessary for living the spiritual life. So I was governed by a very different concept. very, very interesting that when I was about 14 or 15, I used to keep a journal. And one of the things I had journalized about was my whole concept of marriage. So even as a kid, 14, 15, I was looking at that. And I had the unique opportunity to contrast the two different points of views later on in life. And I look back and I say, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't get married out of this crap. You know what I mean? Because it was all fantasy, romanticism, you know. That happily ever after crap. You know what I mean? Soulmate, you know, all that stuff. But Maharaji helped me to approach my marriage from a different perspective. As preparation, spiritual preparation, so forth and so on. That's not always the case. So you have to look and see, and look into your own life and see. Which path is for you? The path of the Sadhu or the path of the householder? And really come to some kind of conclusion about it, objectively. With no mythologizing, no fantasizing, none of that stuff. See it clear, see it soberly. One of the biggest errors you will make is choosing the wrong path. When you should have been a Sadhu, you're married. And now you can't make any use of that relationship at all because fundamentally you're a Sadhu. Or you chose the life of a Sadhu and you're not made of the stuff of a Sadhu. You really didn't do it right. And you should have been married. And therefore you will not benefit from it. So you have to be very accurate with this one here. Very accurate with this one here. No fooling. No kidding. So you must feel deep within yourself and find out about yourself. Are you Sadhu or are you householder? And then once you got that clear, then there's something possible for you. And if you don't know which one you are, then you're even in a worse condition, aren't you? Then you're just stuck in confusion, doubt, indecision. You can't do anything. You're simply stuck. You're not going anywhere. So find the right path. So after seriously reflecting on this matter, and it's still the case that you feel that the path of the Sadhu is yours, proceed from there. But if there's anything in you that is proceeding by force, where you're disciplining yourself, where there's a kind of yoga involved in it, then be alert to that. Because that's going to present some problems down the road. So there must be no reluctance in you. And it cannot be by default. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's not by default. Can't do it like that. You have to choose it on the basis of how it resonates with you. No fooling, no kidding. So I'm here today to talk to you about what I have understood to be the nature of the way of the Sadhu. The way of the Sadhu is much like the way of the ninja, the way of the samara, the way of the cholin, the way of the monk. It is a beautiful way, full of poetry, great poetry. It's living poetically, very profound. The life is first characterized by great serenity. Everything is made bare. Even their living quarters are made bare. Very simple. You will notice those individuals who live the way of the Sadhu live very, very simple. You are amazed. One of the earliest recollection I have on coming onto the path, finding out about the path, because then there wasn't many black people at all, certainly no young black people, to my knowledge, nowhere in the country were really related to this particular form of mysticism associated with what my guru taught. In those days, there was no South Africa. There's a big Radha Swami movement in South Africa now, and Uganda and so forth and so on. But back then, not even in Africa was there any satsangis. There's probably more black satsangis in Africa than there is here. But then there was simply none. And so you can imagine how rare it was to meet another brother that was on the path, especially closer to me in age. But there was one such brother who stayed on the north side. His name was Clarence, incidentally. And I remember meeting him at satsang, and he permitted me to come by his place, and have some satsang. He'll share a few things with me. And I can remember that how shocked I was when I went into Clarence's apartment. I didn't see, there was no TV. I'm saying, what's up with this? What's up with this brother? You know what I mean? He had no TV. There was it was a very clean apartment, but it was very sparse. And there was a table, a table in the kitchen, 2 chairs, but it was very, very, very sparse. And that whole apartment was a reflection of him. He did not talk very much. I did most of the talking as usual. He did most of the listening. But I must tell you that it was like coming into one of those scenes from a kung fu movie. You know what I mean? That's the best kind of description I can give you, where you meet, the kung fu guy, you know what I mean, out in the world, and he's living this strange kind of, very quiet life, but he was, and I remember most about it was that he was single and he had no children and all of that, And apparently he was one of these wandering guys, because I didn't see Clarence very much thereafter. About 2 years, Clarence disappeared. I never even seen him again in all these years, But he had that quality of a Sadhu. I saw it again when I went to the dairy. I saw a whole, you didn't even see him that much. I mean, you had to go and find a Sadhu. I mean, it was off limits. And I was fortunate enough to meet some of these Sadhu. And again, it was that same flavor. It was just beautiful, beautiful. A kind of real mystique about them. So the first thing you find out is that if you want to live the life of a Sadhu, then you will have to reduce down to the minimum. That's the first thing. Begin to minimize. Begin to subtract. Begin to eliminate everything from your life that is not essential to life. Meeting your bare minimum needs. first thing that you have to do. You got to start unloading baggage. If you were going to live the single life, what would be some of the baggage you would have to unload, considering it right now? So again, that's why it's so important that you need to make the decision first. You know what I mean? Otherwise, this is just useless information to you, right? The first thing that you have to do is prepare for the life of a sadhu. Write that down. Preparation, stage one. And now let's talk about preparation, all right? Now, those of you who are here in transition to getting married, none of this pertains to you. Those of you who are here who are married, none of this should pertain to you either. Okay? Unless something starts resonating in you here, then you're going to have, and be careful, because if something of this way of the sadhu start resonating in you, then you're confronted with a very serious challenge now. Promises to be married will have to be broken. Relationships you are in pursuit of and carrying them to the culmination of marriage will have to be reversed. If something starts resonating in you here, those of you who are in relationships for years now will be moved to a great crisis. So be forewarned. Be very careful about it. You can leave here today vastly more confused and conflicted. Already you may be in relationships full of conflict. Already you have been torn with that, damn, I don't even know if I should be married. And this may push you over that edge. And then there will be all kinds of consequences for you if you remain in that relationship. Then just knowing that this is not for you will increase your suffering. If you come out of the relationship, then you will pay a tremendous price in every sense of the word. So be very careful. Preparation for the way of the Sadhu begins with minimizing, unloading, unpacking, reducing all of your baggage. Now you live life with only that which is necessary. You reduce everything down, and you only carry that which is necessary. Haven't you seen the samurai on the move? Everything is in the bag. The sadhu, everything is in a bag. Everything that they need to live is in their bag, on their back, their knapsack. They have reduced life to the minimum. This minimizing of the needs of life occurs in all three categories. First, the material. Minimizing what you actually need, materialistically speaking. Because so much of your energy in life is devoted to maintaining your material needs, which are almost always way more than you need. Your time, your energy, and so forth and so on is devoted to that. The sadhu is withdrawing energy. Like in meditation, you withdraw attention. What the sadhu is doing is withdrawing energy from everything that is unnecessary to make that energy available now for the spiritual goal and task that they have set for themselves. Are you all following me? So you begin to minimize at the level of the material realm. Space even. They don't need a 6-room apartment. One room is all the room that one who's lived the way of the Sadhu needs. And you have to adapt this way to this environment, of course, to this country, this culture, naturally, because this is where you're at. But everything gets minimized. How much food do you really need to eat? That also gets minimized. How many different pairs of shoes and clothing you need? That is also minimized. The average Sadhu has 2 changes of clothes. That's it. Many of them only 1. And even then, in those cultures that can provide the climate, just say little white cloth, a dhoti cloth, they call it, or a robe, and that's it. When it get dirty, they watch it. Hang it out overnight, wear it again. We minimize everything. If you were going to practice and go the way of the Sadhu, then look into your life and see right now how much loading you got to do. Find out those things you need to start dropping now. I don't want to just be here today with you to give you some information, just, I'm here today if you are serious about living the way of a Sadhu. If you're not serious, then, what are we doing here? If you're not going to do this stuff, why you want me to talk about it? Just so you can say, oh, I didn't know that. That's what them Sadhus. Now I know what these Sadhus do, So if you feel that you want to live your life in the way of the Sadhu, then you must do this. This is your sadhana now. I'm here to initiate you, those who have decided, into the way of the Sadhu. This is not a conversation here. It's not simply a workshop. This is not simply a lecture. I'm here to initiate those of you who are prepared for it into the way of the Sadhu. If you're not prepared for entering into the way of the Sadhu, then I can stop right here. And we can talk about something that pertains to you. Or those of you who want to be initiated into the way of the Sadhu, we can create another meeting so that we will not be disturbed by others. Or we can remove the gallery and the curiosity seekers and not desecrate the initiation into the way of the Sadhu. You mustn't reduce it to philosophy. A few more words about it. preparation then that is necessary to begin living your life in the way of the Sadhu. This is the beautiful life. I should call it the way of wonder, the way of mystery, the way of great poetry. Because it is that. The way of the hero. The way of honor. The living of life on the basis of a code. A real code. It is interesting that Sikhism began like that. You must be familiar with Sikh, the beards and the turban. Maharaji was a Sikh. That's a religion. And that religion was, one shouldn't say at that time it wasn't a religion, it was a mystical path that was being founded by Guru Nanak. Of course, it has become a religion now, but that is always the case with any spiritual tradition. Ultimately, it cools down and coalesces and condenses into a religion, into an organization with dogma, doctrine, priests, rituals, ceremony. But Sikhism wasn't always like that. They did not always worship the Guru Granth Sahib, a book. So if you go to Amritsar in India, and you go into a Sikh Gurdwara, and what you will find, they will have the Granth, the Adi Granth, their holy scriptures. And you will see, they call it Guru Granth. And they'll have Guru Granth Sahib, the book, sitting on a gadi, opened. And you will see people bowing and treating the book just like it was a guru. That is what the great path that Guru Nanak began has resulted in. You'll see them fanning the Guru Granth because they have no guru. So they try to make this book substitute as the guru, and they fan the guru. They make arti around the book, like they used to make arti around the guru. They do puja of the book, you know what I mean? They set food before the book. They treat the book as if it was a guru, but the book is not a guru. But certainly in the days of Guru Nanak and the first 5 Sikh gurus, you see, it was principally a way for a Sadhu, because Guru Nanak Sahib was a Sadhu. And the ideal and the concept of a kasa was established. A kasa is a kind of community of Sadhus, governed by a kind of code of honor and ethics. And the name Sikh itself, Sikh means warrior. And Guru Nanak called them his Sikh warriors. So they were like spiritual warriors. And one of the 5 signs of a Sikh is that they have a sword, for those of you who know something about it, to symbolize that warrior nature. They were like the Indian version of samurai. Even today, you will find in the government of India, most of the soldiers are Sikhs. The military is heavily populated with Sikhs because of that historical quality of warrior, of samurai, discipline, you know what I mean? So forth and so on. And one of the things that is said about Sikhs is that only a Sikh can only be killed by another Sikh. Very similar to what they say about ninjas. Only a ninja can destroy another ninja. Only a samurai can defeat another samurai. Why? Because they're operating out of the same basis of knowledge and so forth and so on. The same is the concept with a Sadhu. The Sadhu simply cannot be defeated by the general, ordinary individual in the world. They cannot be knocked off their path. They cannot be defeated. in the fulfillment of their goals at all by anyone outside. Unlike those who are not living their life at that level of commitment and code. Even in the household, anything can cause you to miss your meditation because you're really not a real householder in the first place. You're just a householder by default. You happen to hear about the past. You were married at that time. It was too damn late, and you're just trying to make the best out of a bad situation. You know, I understand all of that. You have my sympathy, but don't get confused here. You're not a householder in the highest sense of the word. Because in your household, anything can interfere with your spiritual practice. Anything. A dog barking, a pipe running, anything. You're not a Sikh. You don't have that quality. And I've told you that the real householder and the Sadhu are the same. Essentially. The way of the Sadhu requires that you prepare yourself for it. And the first level of preparation is you begin to minimize and reduce all of your material down to the bare minimum. Even food. The Sadhu eat once a day. There's simply no more need for eating more than that. And then those who have perfected and has entered into the higher level of the practice of being a Sadhu, they will eat not only just one meal a day, but no more food than they could hold in the palm of their hands. Can you understand? A handful of food. You can live like that? You think you can do that? Now, of course, in this day and age, you're in America, okay, so you can have 2 hands of food, all right? So don't get depressed. All right? Yeah, you all can have as much food as you can put in 2 hands, and you can even cheat and open your fingers wide. It's all right. But certainly 1 meal a day. Minimum. That's it. You start minimizing. What you'll find about those who are living the way of the Sadhu is that their material needs are very few. That their food needs is very small, and their sleep. The way of the Sadhu, you sleep 4 hours. That's it. 4 hours a day. You don't need more than that. Because you need as much of your waking hour state as possible. For studying and so forth and so on. Are you understanding me? This is perhaps not what you expected to hear today. I'm just giving you a little insight into it. I'm not going to say everything here because, quite frankly, I don't know who in here will want to be a Sadhu after this. You might want to reconsider this thing and go find you a husband and a wife somewhere. And stop playing around here. Don't be confused no more about it. Stop deceiving yourself. Find out you don't have what it takes to live the way of a Sadhu. You're not even supposed to live the way of a Sadhu. And none of this sounds exciting and exhilarating to you. But if there's truly a Sadhu here, they're thrilled with my argument. They're excited. They can't wait to get started. Just like those of us who heard about the path Can't wait to get in their shape. Real enthusiasm. You see? Sleep, 4 hours. No, not for you, Meiji. Are you clear about it? 4 hours. You minimize sleep. So write this down. Material, food, sleep. All three are reduced. You spend 1/3 of your life sleeping it away. Pissing away. Wasting time sleeping. Dreaming, fantasies. Not so in the way of the Sadhu, or for that matter, even the way of the real householder. Not so. Not so at all. Sleep less, so that you will be awake more. The next one, beloved, speech. No, it'll stay under minimized. Oh, okay. You stop talking so damn much. And I know this is going to be hard for black people who looking to live the way of the Sadhu, right? Talking. One of the telltale signs of those living the way of the Sadhu, how they ever talk. That's the first thing people notice about them, because they don't notice them not sleeping, not eating so much. They don't go to their house, but what they notice when they come in contact with them, they almost never talk. And even when they do speak, it's almost like a whisper. They speak as little as is necessary, because again, it's minimizing. They speak as little as necessary, and only when necessary. Very different. They discipline speech, because that energy needs to be conserved now, doesn't it? And remember, it's about the withdrawal and the conservation of energy. It's a very different way of life. That is what gives it that mystique and mysterious love. You'll watch them. They're not talking to anybody. You'll never see them in conversation. Always in silence. They minimize company. Put that down. They minimize company. You won't find them in a herd, a crowd. They actually minimize that. They minimize relationships. Interesting. They minimize. Very different. Now, much more can be said about that. I haven't unpacked all of it, but I certainly want to start you to really reflect here and really consider this thing. If your intention is to live the way of the Sadhu, to make maximum benefit of being single, then this is what you get to consider. This is how you do that. This is part of the initiation for that. The next category, stage 2, beloved, now, it's practice. Practice. practice remains the same, whether it's for householder or Sadhu, the essential practice. Simbran, the bhajan, and all of these things, that remains the same. The meditation, all of that remains the same. It's the same practice, you see. Except they become devoted to the practice. The energy that the householder has to put into maintaining their family and so forth, that energy becomes freed up for the person living the way of the Sadhu and is now made to be devoted to the practice. Like you work 8 hours a day to support your family, they're going to meditate 8 hours a day, minimum, to support their sadhana. Write it down. Minimum now. 8 hours a day is practice. This is a very different thing. You don't get around the practice. It's scary, isn't it? Huh? don't get nervous. She can't even write it. Minimum. Because that becomes your job. Your job is to practice, isn't it? I mean, it really becomes your job. That's what you do. You practice. And you'll see that quality in those who are living the way of the Sadhu. Whether that form is the form of the samurai. You see the samurai, it's practicing. 8 hours a day with that sword. You see the martial artist practicing. You see that Sholing priest sitting up on a piece of rock high up in the mountains all day long to sundown. You know what I mean? They're practicing. Minimizing their life, they're not just living it up. That energy is transferred now. You'll see them sitting on the beach all day long in sadhana. Practice. Their whole life become devoted, body, mind, and soul, to practice. That is what characterizes them. The Shaivite tradition, one of the unique things about the Shaivite mystics was that these were mountain practitioners. I mean, these guys, Brahmaji, they would go into the mountain, and they were infamous. I mean, they sit on rock. I mean, we got nice cushions, and you know what, even this can hurt after a while. These guys are sitting on rocks. The Tibetan tradition, they're sitting in snow. You understand me? They're perfecting practice. These are the guys that go out into a desert and sit out in the sun and practice to the point that they cannot be distracted even by the heat of the sun or the cold of the snow. They're practicing some real sadhana. No fooling, no kidding. The Shaivite mystic will go even one step further. They will go into the desert, then they will collect rocks, and they will make a circle of rocks. And any of you who have been down in the south of India or looked into some of these books, you will see them, a circle of rocks, and these rocks would have first been heated into a fire. Or some of them would just have fire surrounding them, you see, to make it even hotter than the natural heat in the desert, kicking it up all the way. And then they would enter into this circle, and they would sit in a circle of fire. We call it the fire sacrifice. And they're learning how to withdraw from the distraction of ultimate bodily discomfort. You see? Of course, you're struggling and trying to withdraw from the distraction in your left knee and your right toe. You can't even handle the discomfort in your right toe. In the way of the Sadhu, no, just the reverse. They're going to perfect the practice. They're going to practice to the point of perfection. And they will go sit in that cold. And then the abbot, or if they're living in a community of Sadhu, whoever is the most senior and most accomplished among them, will help them achieve that ability. In the Tibetan tradition, the Lama, right? When you're learning how to do this kind of unique meditation, to sit in the cold, for instance, they will take a wet shawl and put over you, a wet sheet, and you can't go nowhere until you dry that sheet. You have to generate the heat. When the sheet is dry, then you pass to the next level of practice. The goal is the perfection of sadhana in practice. And they spend a minimum 8 hours a day doing that. Technically, it's from sun up to sundown. I'm just saying 8 hours because that makes sense in our culture. But in their worlds where they live, it's particularly if the climate permits it, and sometimes if the climate don't permit it, practice begins at sun up, because they're only sleeping 4 hours. They don't have no problem, right? They're waiting. They're up and waiting for the sun. Practice begins from sun up to sundown. And during that period, they're aiming to perfect it. Even some of the early Christian mystics will go into the desert fathers and the desert mothers that you read about during the Christian era, you know, the era prior to the Nicene Council and all of that stuff, you know what I mean? The Alexandrian period. They will go into the desert. John the Baptist was in the desert, living off of honey and wild locusts with just a rag around them. The way of the Sadhu is ancient, and the way has appeared in every culture. Stage 3, and actually more than stages, these are dimensions, I should say. You all understand seva. Seva. Service to humanity. The whole of humanity, like the householder serve their family, with your wife and your children or your husband, you give them your what? You give them your money, you give them your time, you give them all of that. What you give into your family, they give to the whole of humanity. They do seva with body, wealth, mind. They do seva. Real seva. Not the kind of seva you do. Well, you all don't really do seva, so it's not even fair to compare the two. What you are mostly involved in is doing your own thing and then trying to pass that off to me to have me stamp it and endorse it as seva. That is bullshit. That's just you doing your own thing. I go along with it because you really don't know any better. You're not capable of much more than that. But I am not confused about it. I know seva when I see seva. This is just your own ego ambition. That's all that is. Disguised and being presented as a selfless act in my behalf. What do that? It has nothing to do with me. At all. It's what you want to do. A part of your ego mythology, part of your ego game, aim to make you look better or enrich you in some kind of way, shape, form, or fashion. That's all that's about. Has nothing to do with real seva. In the way of the Sadhu, the seva is real. And remember, the same is the case in the way of the householder. These are not different outlines. Hmm? You will find in the way of the householder, there's also this minimization going on, right? In every category as well. Sometimes you may not be able to see it because the wife, may be not a householder, right? So the wife wants a, 12 room. But if there's a real householder there, he or she is living in one of the, they're in the damn washroom all the time. They got one little corner in the house. That's where they spend all their time. They're still not eating at every meal and so forth. All of that is preserved. All that is preserved. And like their counterpart, the Sadhu, they do real seva. The Sadhu devotes their life to doing seva. No fooling, no kidding. And you see this, don't you? It's one of the beautiful things, the quality of that individual living the way of the Sadhu. And not just say with the other human being, but even non-human animals. You know what I mean? You'll see them stop and actually pick a squirrel up and nurture. You must have read the stories of the Buddha and his great exploits as a bodhisattva. You know what I mean? Seeing a dog. You remember the story, don't you? The Venerable Theravadaji will bear witness then to me. And the dog had been wounded and laying there dying, and the wound had become infected. Maggots were, you know what I mean? And the Buddha took his tongue and cleaned it. Do you understand me? Seva. Relieving the suffering of others. And that's really what seva is about, isn't it? Seva is not something you do to make yourself feel better. Oh, Bhagwan, I got an idea for some seva. I want to do this here. This my seva. Bullshit. That has nothing to do with nobody. You're doing that bullshit for you. You know what I mean? I'm just waiting for you to catch on. That's all. It's for you. Has nothing to do with me or others. You. That's all that's about. It is simply not the case in the way of the Sadhu. When one becomes prepared, willing to live like this, then one is initiated into the way of the Sadhu. They usually shave their heads, take off all of their clothing, and don a robe. Well, of course, you can't do that in this culture easily, right? But there are counterparts. And there are other ways to symbolically recognize your decision to enter into the way of the Sadhu. So if there are some of you who are ready to become Sadhus in the House of Ra, fine. See me about it. But come to me when you are real about it. Don't make this kind of nonsense with me that you're making today out here. You see? Where you are just intellectually curious about it, or you find yourself by default in the state of singlehood and you're just trying to make the damn best of it that you can, but that's about all. Don't make this kind of business with me. And try to call that the way of the Sadhu and living your life from the point of being single. In that instance, you are just demonstrating your superficiality, your lack of commitment, your confusion, your self-deception, your own mythology, your own nonsense. That is all. Now, in all fairness to you, since you have no idea what's going to come out of this crazy mouth of mine, you're not to blame for any of this at all. You see, so I'm not blaming you. I'm just getting you straight here, so that the next time you call me, you'll know what to be ready to do. Something to discuss, beloveds? We're open for discussion. Anything you like to discuss about it, you're most welcome. Yes, beloved? Good. Good. Yes. Yes, that's all right.
I mean, I never wasn't familiar with it, but I know I don't know.
That's all right. No. This is good. It's good. Because, see, you get clear about it. And that's what I'm talking about, Patricia G. You know what I mean? Getting clear about it and then getting straight about it, and that's all right. Because nobody holds a gun. The thing is to find your path. It's to find your path. Now, those of you who are in transition, who know that really your way is the way of the householder, all right? Now, you got to get down to work on that. Get busy with that. You know what I mean? Stop messing around with it. Because time is ticking, right? If you know that you need a householder context, and you will best operate out of that, then let's get down to business here. You know what I mean? Let's get to business with that, right? And we can talk about that too, to some degree, and find out what do you need to do to get out of this purgatory that you've been in for the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years, and so forth and so on. Come out of that state. Find out what is holding you outside of relationship. What role are you playing in that whole thing? There might be something very unrealistic about what you're doing. You may have some very wrong views and very exaggerated expectations and all other kind of limits on you. And transition don't count, because in transition, you're not committed to nothing. You just stuck. It's downtime. You're not governed by nothing, no code or no real situation, nothing. So reflect on it, truly. There's the way of the Sadhu, and then there's the way of the householder. There is no third way. There is none. And they don't even come to the satsang that much. I mean, they come to the general satsang. Maharaj, you give satsang, you'll see the sadhus there. After talk over, you don't see the sadhu no more. You don't find them in the evening halls. You don't find them walking down the roads in the dairy. You don't find them chit-chatting. Sadhu comes out for satsang, and he's back. That's the way of the sadhu. Yeah, you will follow the code of the, yeah.
But that's the same code of the household, right?
Yes, the real householder you'll find is doing the same thing, right? Basically, you won't find the real householder. He'll come out of his household situation. You come to satsang, you get the satsang, and that's it. You won't find him or her either. What you find are only the wannabes, the confused, the people who are not really practicing anything radically. Yes,
I
beloved?
would say part of the life is being detached. And whether you're in a household or not, you do your role, but you don't become attached to it.
Absolutely.
So you detach from the world also.
Sure. Even in the household condition, you're detached. Here, this is also
Same
detachment.
thing.
It's just detachment. That's all. It is always detachment. Always a detachment. Right. That's right. It's the purpose. So these are the ways. We gathered, though, to say a few things about the way of the Sadhu because it's such a pretty way. I mean, it's really pretty. I mean, it's the way that poets write about it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's heart-rendering. It's heart-rendering. You could see, again, the spirit of a Sadhu even in a householder. You know what I mean? And the spirit of a householder even in a Sadhu. I mean, you see that, a Sadhu being so tender. Sometimes they'll go and they'll adopt a kid and raise a kid with them. I mean, it's not like, you know, they're above having these things, but it's very different. You know what I mean? It's a very different. You read about it all the time where when the Cholin mystics would take in orphans into their temples and raise these boys and educate these boys and feed these boys and train these boys and then release them back into the world. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So they have that ability to father and to mother. They don't lack these skills. You understand? It's just being demonstrated in a very different context. And how often you see the spirit of the Sadhu in the householder as well. You know what I mean? So it's just really a very beautiful, beautiful thing. Mirabai exhibit that spirit of the Sadhu in the householder because Mirabai was a princess. Right? And on her wedding day, she was telling her father, because he said, Mirabai, you getting ready to fix yourself up? Mirabai said, I'm just getting married. This ain't worth fixing my hair about. Just getting married. Spirit of the Sadhu. You see? Even then, being displayed. Buddha is a classic example of the spirit of a Sadhu. You know what I mean? Within the context. King Janaka, you know? They asked, when Sukdeva was sent to King Janaka to take initiation from him, because Sukdeva's father had told him, son, you know, you have to go to King Janaka, get initiation. Sukdeva was looking for the greatest guru because Sukdeva was absolutely brilliant. He was a spiritual prodigy, precocious from the womb. At 12 years old, you see. There's been a few people like that. Sukdeva, Jananeshwar. In fact, Jananeshwar compiled his commentaries, you know, on the Bhagavad Gita and all of that. He was dead at 21. You know, Nagaguna, you know what I mean? We codified Buddhism. You know, 23 is gone. You see, Vivekananda and all of these guys were just born brilliant. And Sukdeva was brilliant, but he still needed a guru. And his father said, son, you go to King Janaka. And Sukdeva was against this, you see, because King Janaka is a king. What can a king know about this? He's a king, living in a royal palace with all the pomp and circumstance and power and all of that. And so when Sukdeva came, you know, he was full of doubt. He obeyed his father and he went, Patrichaji, to see this King Janaka and to take initiation from him in his final stages of development. But before the king would take him into teaching, he had to teach him the most important lesson first. And as they brought Sukdeva to him, he said, Sukdeva, come here. Because he knows Sukdeva is reluctant. He knew that Sukdeva's question was, how can you be a enlightened guru with all of that kind of sadhu stuff, and you sitting up here in all these gowns with all of this court around you, the harem and it all. He had the whole, you was a king, for God's sake. You know what I mean? That's enough to create doubt in anybody's mind. And he said, I know that. He says, but he says, and I'm going to explain that to you, but first, something I want you to do. So David can't say, no, this is Janica, he's the king. He had somebody bring me a cup of milk. Put it on his head. Set it on his head. And he said, David, he says, you're in my kingdom. I'm going to have you taken on a tour today to see my kingdom, the vastness of it, so forth and so on, so that you'll be familiar with it. But he says, but you better not waste one drop of milk from that cup. And he summoned his henchman. He said, go with him. If he spill one drop, behead him on the spot. Now have a nice day. So Dave went out. How much of the kingdom could he see? Nothing. Oh, he was walking like one of them Zen monks, you know, very soft. I mean, he had all the Tai Chi moves, and he was looking pretty, dodging crowds, and it was gorgeous. He had learned that Zen walking, just that fast, and he made it back. You see, at the end of the day, he's exhausted, but he made back alive. And the king said, so Dave, how did you like your tour? How about those beautiful elephant gardens that I have? And what about that hanging garden? Did they show you that? Did you guys show them everything? Yes, Lord, we showed them everything. He said, so Dave, how you just say I couldn't see nothing? And he said, well, what was the problem? He said, oh, King Sab, all I was concerned about is not spilling a drop of this milk. I could not distract my attention off of this. And Janica said, Acha. He said, that's how I sit here on this throne. Undistracted. If I become distracted, I'll die. And now, the training could begin. And of course, Sudev went on to become the successor of Janika, because he learned that it's about attention, isn't it? So ultimately, you see the Sadhu, like the householder, become like Sukdeva. They must dedicate their attention. So this is a little bit, you see, about the way of the Sadhu. Now, Satrani, you had asked for this workshop because out of jealousy, but for the workshop done for these married people on the yoga of Dharma, the Dharma of marriage, and so Satrani said, well, Bhagwan, that's unfair. It has to be something for us. How about a workshop on the Dharma of being single? But I said, ain't none of you really truly single. You're in transition. You know what I mean? You have not taken a vow to be single. These folks took a vow to be married. I mean, we got witnesses. They went before God. They signed contracts, legal paper, the whole 10 yards. I can justify that. But how do I justify with you? You're not taking any kind of vow to be single, and certainly not before God and a group of witnesses. So there is no Dharma governing your life as such. But I thought, well, maybe Satrani has a point. There may be somebody there, right, that I missed, right, that really were vowed to live in the single way of God realization. So I said, okay, good. Hook it up. So I'm here. And now the rest is up to you. And if you feel that this way of the Sadhu is for you, then good. We'll begin a Sadhu order of the House of Ra.
Well, what I understand is right, is that the way of the Sadhu and the way of the household is
Yes. But if you neither, then what are you? That's the point.
no, I understand.
Right.
But I'm saying
Yes, they're the same. So you don't win, right? No, it's not like one is easier. Yes, absolutely. It's not like one is easier. They're not. You know what I mean? It's just which one resonates with you.
right.
Yes, beloved.
Yeah, but you can't choose to be a Sadhu until somebody comes along and they decide to get married, something like that. And that way they're different.
And that way they're very different because you choose to get married. You must choose to be, you know what I mean?
Right, and that's a lifelong thing, just like that.
Just like marriage. It's not an experiment. Yeah. Sure. When you get married, it's for life. Those who were at the workshop on the Dharma of marriage, you become governed now by those vows, don't you? Hmm? And most of you, I'm sure, have seen or gotten your hands on copies of the Dharma of marriage. And if you haven't, you should get them. You know what I mean? Because the way of the Sadhu is covered by and governed by vows. Hmm? Even in the Christian tradition, you see they would take the vow of poverty, again, of minimization. That's what that vow was about, wasn't it? Hmm? St. Francis of Assisi and the Dominicans and all of these different orders, the Carmelites and so forth, they are characterized by a vow of poverty, minimization, and almost identically the same way. So it doesn't vary much across culture, does it? All right? The monk sleeps they live in a cell in the monastery. It's not like they got a suite, you understand me? It's a cell, right? It's a little room. Those of you who have gone to the Dominican on our retreats, the rooms you stayed in were the rooms that the monks lived in. That was it. That was home for 40, 50 years. Just that little room. And now with all that luxurious bedding, you know what I mean? They upgraded it, you know. That was it. Food, minimum, sleep, minimum. Even those in Satarani, you must have seen them, and some of the other people there must have seen them. Those monks, now, the few that's left, still are up at 3. They begin at 3 o'clock. If you was up at 3 o'clock, then if you would have looked down in the chapel, you would have seen some priests, old as they were. That's how it is. Speech in the Trappist, you don't even speak. If you're going to become a Trappist monk, there is no talk. You can sing at the services, but there's no talk in silence. It's rigorously practiced among the Trappist monks. Thomas Metron was a Trappist monk. And if you read the work of Thomas Metron, you know, you get the same flavor as if you're reading a Buddhist monk. Same thing. Their savor was work. They worked. They would have a farm, they would go out and work, and they would make food and bread for the community, clothes, or whatever, something they would make that would go outside of the monastery for the benefit of the community. And they would work at that 8 hours a day. That was their seva. And of course, prayer. That's how it was. But that's the real way of the Sadhu. It's a beautiful way. And not the wandering Sadhu is just gorgeous. You know, it's just a gorgeous thing. You see, it is the stuff that great epics are made out of. You know, great stories are told about them. When you meet them, these people are so beautiful, they bring tears to your eye. They really are beautiful people. So humble, so sweet, so powerful. You know what I mean? Yet so unassuming. Just really beautiful. Beautiful. Mysterious. Very nice. Something else to say about it? Yes, beloved?
I don't think most of us want to be Sadhus.
How many want to be Sadhus now? Huh? You don't want to be this.
So what about the preparation
for the householder? Well, first preparation, you must get into the relationship of marriage or committed relationship. You got to enter into that. You got to do whatever it's got to be done for that. You got to give up all of the resistances, holding out, waiting for Mr. Right and the perfect mate and all that. That's just all. That's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. That's romanticizing. You're confusing the romantic with what is real. You have to drop all of that. It's not about being romantically involved. You see? You get into a relationship. That guy that parks the car in the garage that you park in at work, that's been hitting on you, that really likes you, go out with him. You understand? And if he says, after a few days and you feel and he treats you pretty good, and he said, will you marry me? Say, yes. And let's get started. But you want doctors and lawyers to hit on you, all right? Or these good-looking brothers, these Smokey Robinson-looking brothers. No. He may not be handsome. He don't need to be handsome for this. But if you're full of all this, and you are confusing romanticism with real relationship, that's where you're having your problem. The world is full of people. You can't hook up with one of them. What does that say about you? And you can't tell me these brothers not hitting on you, because it's in the nature of a brother to hit on anything. So I know you lying, right? A brother will hit on a picture of a woman. So there's simply no way you can walk past a brother and not be hit on. It's going to happen. You see. Now, you just got to make sure he's not married and all of that other stuff, because you want one of these brothers you can come into a relationship with. Right? And get busy. It's really that simple. Start learning how to say yes. You are living life on the basis of no. You're in a no state of mind. And when you're in this no state of mind, then nothing can happen. Start feeling more yes. Have a little bit more confidence in yourself. And for God's sake, drop all of this myth and all of this romanticizing, all this fantasy. Grow up. For God's sake, grow up. And get onto the path, one or the other. Now, if either way, you're going to have to do that, even to become a Sadhu, to go the way of the Sadhu or to go the way of the householder. Either way is what is required. You got to come out of this mythology. You are single, trapped, stuck in transition because you're full of myth at some level. And of course, that is not flattering, but that is so. Your problem is your myth that you have created about yourself. That's what that is about. And you're clinging to your myth. You're in relationship with your myth. You are in relationship with the image of yourself. You are narcissistic. You are in love with a reflection and a pun. And like Narcissus, you will perish looking at that. And you will simply accomplish nothing. Neither worldly or spiritually. You would have just fantasized your whole life away. It's like dreaming your whole life away. That's all. So you ask, beloved, what should be done? First thing, get serious or be made serious by somebody. Grow up. Grow up. Yes, beloved? I don't know if the peanut gallery can comment. That was the rule at the last time. Wasn't that right? No comments from the peanut gallery, but go ahead. I know you got to say something good, otherwise you usually don't say much. Go right ahead, beloved. That'll disqualify you, right?
I'm out of it. But it's an amazing thing when there was marriage workshop per se, because there's not too much difference between the two. But one of the things in which that it really will make you see something in yourself that you ain't anything like you think that you are. And then you've got a mate that will prove it. You've got someone that will show you in not only a major, children also, but you ain't gonna pay no attention to them because of what they know. But there's something that's deep down, I can't say in all of you, but there was something deep down inside of myself, and which that I didn't see until after that workshop, in which that it made me cry for 2 days.
Okay.
It was so horrible. It was really, really ugly. It was like a monster, as a matter of fact, and it was me. It was truly me. And that's something in which that, again, we're not willing to stand up and take a really good look at that shadow stuff. As a matter of fact, there's a letter in which that a white woman wrote from Virginia that spit on all you black women as relate to relationships. I don't know how many people are familiar with the letter in which that the white woman wrote, but she said a lot. And it was reality. It's reality because, again, according to Bilal Hussein with his Geechee woman theory,
Geechee woman theory.
Bilal has a Geechee woman theory. But it's something which that we really have to take a look at. And that's something in which that we're not willing to do. At least I wasn't until, thank God for the workshop, it was brought out. So that's all. Yeah.
What is the Geechee woman?
No, don't tell her.
Bilal, what is the Geechee?
Have Bilal do a workshop on that. I want the record to reflect I don't know anything about it. Toward any Geechee woman. That's strictly that's a renegade movement within the house. Anything else to say about it, beloved? Anything else to say about it? On this beautiful rainy evening at Satrane's house. And it's always such a pleasure to be here. In this beautiful place. Yeah, all this gotta go. You're down to a shelter with a, with, that's enough. You're only gonna have 2 changes of clothes.
Right?
Ah,
Isn't that true?
this is the way of the Sadhu.
Or am I just, what's the word? No, I'm not breaking the rules. Am I trying to modify it?
Edit.
Edit, okay.
Yeah, that's right. Edit, can't edit it.
But couldn't that be
Why would you want to be
wherever I'm at?
anywhere other than a shelter?
Why would I want to be?
Right. There you will have maximum anonymity. Nobody will even want to know your name. Why would you want to be anywhere else? Why do you think the Sadhu went to caves? I'm editing. The Sadhu went to caves. Lived in caves. If you go to Dera, even now, you can see it. Though Maharaji built quarters for them. But prior to Maharaji, even during the times of the Great Master, there was, and I'm talking during the time of the Great Master, we're talking 1940s, so forth, all the way up to 1948, 1950, even in Dera, the Sadhu was still living in caves. Bilal, did you look at them too? You probably got some pictures. I don't know where my pictures are. Maybe see Bilal, if he took pictures, you actually see cave dug into the mountains. 'Cause the Himalayas are not very far from there. I mean, if you go about Himalayas, you see nothing but caves all over the place, dug in. No running water, no heat, or anything. What more do a Sadhu need other than a cave? Really? I mean, really now. You see, it is that kind of reluctance, you know what I mean, that tells you that's not your way. Because the Sadhu is gleeful about it. It excites. They can't wait to live in a cave.
Because there's freedom in that.
Yes.
There's freedom in that kind of thing.
Yeah, they're looking for this equal freedom. The more you minimize, the more freedom you got. And you haven't understood that your freedom is being compromised because you got too much. And it has taken your freedom. And you, instead of you doing savor to humanity, doing savor for the Guru and savor for the Sangha, you're doing savor to the world. the material world. That's where all your money go. You can't give no money for the benefit of the dissemination of Dharma, because all your money go to your bills. Your bills, which are all related to you and your own egoity, your own strategy to make your own life feel better. You can't give no time, because all your time go to you. You can't do no seva. You don't have that kind of freedom. You want to do it. You're in no position to do it, because you are a slave yourself. You are owned by that which you own. You don't have that kind of freedom to do it. Yes, beloved?
And I can say, not that I'm ready for this.
You said that already. You don't have to keep repeating it.
I can see how it would be a big relief not to worry about clothes, not to worry about a car, not to worry about just the simple things in life. Like, just the simple basic things we cling to in life.
Sure.
I can just see how it could be freedom, just relieving and uplifting and let go and all.
Tremendous.
Right.
A tremendous pressure comes off of you. So this is not the unhappy life. I'm telling you, this is the deliriously happy life. This is quality life. This is quality living. And even the householder who can achieve that degree of detachment is living a quality life. So Miji Maharaji said that even in a householder situation with your children and your wife, you have to understand and look upon these people as thieves and robbers, and not be robbed of your time, right? And standing in that position, you see, you're able to make right use of the relationship. As Sattara was saying, you'll learn all kinds of things about yourself, right? But when you can become liberated, even in the midst of it, they have called them Jiva Murtis. Write this down. J-I-V-A-N, J-I-V-A-N, Murti, M-U-R-T-I, Jiva Murti. Liberated while living. Free while living. Most of you will not become free until you are taking your last breath. At death, you become free, and then only for a split second, because then you enter into the next bardo and get ready to repeat the same foolishness. The only relief, the great relief, and the only relief that you have is when you are in subsupti, when you're in a state of deep, dreamless sleep. That's the only time you ever have any relief. The moment you wake up in any level of consciousness other than deep, dreamless sleep, you're in hell again. And you're back into the pressure. Even in your damn dreams, you can't relax. Even there, you're always involved in some struggles. All right? That's true, isn't it? That's true. So the only peace you have is when you fall asleep and don't dream. And then that don't count because you're not conscious of it. Even that you're only aware of in hindsight when you wake up again. Oh boy, I rested well last night. You see, you can't even be contemporary with it. So you really can't luxuriate in it. You understand? At all. You're absolutely right. You see? When you can drop that, freedom. Freedom is a matter of subtraction. Now, what are you doing? You're trying to get free by adding more to your life. Now, the mathematics that you're pursuing is absolutely backwards. Freedom is through subtraction. No fooling, no kidding. And what is the point? What is the point? You got all of this stuff. You feel any more freedom? No. No. I don't. Creature comfort, yes, that says it very well. That is dealing with body ego. Is living at the level of pure body ego, where your principal identification is just as being a body. It hasn't even moved up to the mental level. Body. Food, sex, you see, material things. That's your whole life. And you live at that level. And at that level, you don't even need a mate. For what? because you haven't evolved that far yet, right? As long as you get you something to eat, have you some occasional sex, casual or self-induced, either one will do, right? In your case. Have you some television to watch, right? You okay, fundamentally. Oh, every now and then you wish you had a woman or a man, you see. But you haven't really even reached that, because another man and woman is competition for you, competition for food. It's really interesting. The Europeans are a classic example of this kind of xenophobia. We call it xenophobic disorder. And the Europeans, because of having to cross the sapient threshold in Ice Age Europe, naturally, food supplies were very scarce. And when a group would go on a hunt and they make a kill, they would usually eat it right on the spot, because if they didn't, it would freeze again, right? So you couldn't take the risk of dragging it back to the cave, because by that time the damn thing is frozen. Who can eat it? So they would just kill and start eating. And if the children and the wife happened to see them, then their task was to run out here to the kill. But the problem with that is that the guy, the man, will fight them off, right? Because he's afraid they will, eat more, eat too much, and he won't have enough for himself. So the male was actually afraid of his own family, right? And very often they will live separate from him out of fear that it will be too much competition with my food supply. So there's something still Neanderthal in man and woman, isn't it?
It's the caucus.
Yeah. And it is in us.
Yeah.
It's not just them. I mean, humanity is humanity. So it's a lot of stuff here. So you have a lot to consider. You have a lot to consider here. Find out, is it the way of the Sadhu your way, or is it the way of the household? Either way, either one, it resonates. But whatever it is, stop bullshitting and get down to business with it. And get out of this purgatory and get out of this transition stage. All right? Get out of that. Get out of that. Because there's nothing in that. There's nothing in it. And either one is beautiful, if lived rightly. Both are beautiful. Both are beautiful. And for those of you who are serious about the Sadhu, see me. We'll come up with your 2 sets of clothes. I'll help you. Satra, would you design something? Start thinking about a design, Satra. 2 sets, right? 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts, or 2 skirts and 2 blah, I mean something. And we start scaling down, because that's pretty. That's a pretty life. Again, I don't want you to misunderstand. This is a gorgeous life. Now, this is a gorgeous life. And usually, the householder, even when that thing is over with and it collapses, the wife died, the husband died, the children grow up, automatically they start moving into this. Because this is what classical sannyas look like. When I talk about sannyas and so forth and so on, that's classical sannyas. So it is the dream of every householder to become Sadhu. You know what I mean? One day. It is certainly my dream. You know what I mean? You see. That's a beautiful, beautiful. That's a beautiful. That's living life at the level of sheer poetry. And that's profound. And that is beautiful. That is beautiful. And it's a great life if you can live it. If you have the opportunity to live it and you feel that resonance in you. Right? That's great. Bilal would tell you, even when we were growing up, long before the path. And you could just see how historical these impulses are in your psyche. You know what I mean? By just reflecting. And he would tell you that even when we were little boys, living in Lundale, and I'll never forget this, we were on the back porch of where we lived on Washington and all, and I can remember getting a sheet off the bed on a nice summer day, making my first toga, and fashioning a little Greek-like crown of leaf. And when I put that toga on, it felt so right. And even in my black nationalist days, I actually dressed the part. I mean, I had the staff, the robe, and I would walk through Douglas Park with my staff. Of course, I don't know what's going on, but that's that impulse. That's that impulse. And spent a lot of time sitting on banks of the lagoons, and there was a tree that overhung the lagoon, and I would climb the tree and sit up in the tree, you know what I mean? So, if it wasn't for just a little bit of this bad karma, I would have made it. I had a little bit, Brother Leroy, I had a little bad karma, man. So it happened to me, you too. Same story, right? We got caught. What could we do, right? And so for 32 years, I've been trying to burn off this last. But no, I certainly can. There's a natural attraction there for it.
It's a surrendered life.
It's a beautiful life. It is a life of freedom. Freedom. Just as you said, freedom. There should be no feeling of loss and restraint and suffering. It's not like that. It's like taking off a pair of shoes that are too tight. Who's going to complain about that? I heard the story I've told many times about Nasruddin, Mullah Nasruddin. The story goes, Mullah Nasruddin is seen hobbling along from work to home. Every day, his neighbors seeing him coming, hobbling down the street, Leroy South, hobbling. And one day he said, Mullah, what's wrong? He said, these damn shoes, this shoe is killing me. And he said, Mullah, you've been hobbling like this for weeks. I've been watching you. Mullah, if the shoe is too small, why don't you just take it off? Why you keep wearing it? Mullah said to the man, he said, you don't understand. My wife and children has created such a hell for me. My job, I hate it. You understand? I don't like where I'm working. I don't like where I'm living. My whole life is just so full of suffering. The only thing I have to look forward to is getting home and taking this damn shoe off. So, leave me alone. So, you see, it's like that, right? When you take the shoe of this whole life off, that's becoming the way of the Sadhu, free, living free, detached. Not living irresponsibly. That's a different thing. I'm not talking about being no bum down on the Skid Row. Those are not Sadhus. What you see there, those are bums. Those are panhandlers. Those are failure. You understand? Yeah. I say just go there. You know what I mean? I don't say be one of them. Just live. Like, you see, go in the outskirts of town. But the point is, those are failures. That's a very different phenomenon. A Sadhu is not a failure in life. This Sadhu could have been a very successful businessman. Sometimes they were successful businessmen. These are people who are not failures in life. They're not Sadhu by default. You understand me? It's Sadhu by choice. That's a vast difference. And it is not going against their nature. It is in their nature to begin with. And just like you can feel the householder thing, right? Sometimes the householder is in your nature. And then, is there anything wrong with that? Of course not. That is the way to go. You see? Follow that path that is consistent with your nature. What I'm simply saying, though, you must get into a position to live the spiritual life. Doesn't matter whether it's the position of a household or the way of the Sadhu, but get into a position and come out of purgatory, come out of this waffing, if you're at that age. Now, Maharaji, all saints say that there's a certain age where you're not expected to do either of these. You see? There's a part of life where you still got to get your education, you're still at home with your parents. I mean, that's understandable, right? But certainly by a certain age, you see, certainly by the age of 25, because that's when most people finish their education, unless you're going to do a PhD, but even then, you know, that can be worked around. But you through with your education, you started your job, and you've pretty much decided on a career. You done did a little dating and so forth and so on, you know what I mean? So now it's time to come to some kind of decision. If you're 25 and you still getting an education and still dating, right, and all of that, then you are simply suffering from some kind of arrested development, aren't you? Get down to business here. You're 50 years old. You're not going to live forever. Get down to some business here. You can't live with your mama all your life. And you can't go to school all your life. You see? How will you do that? Choose a path. And then be prepared to go through whatever that ordeal requires of you. And choose it out of this spiritual awareness that you have. This is your advantage. It's not like you haven't heard the Dhamma. You've heard Dhamma. So you are not disadvantaged as ordinary people. But I love that. That's sweet. I love that. That's a pretty path. That's a real pretty path. You see. Now, of course, we may not have to exaggerate it to 2 pairs of clothes. You understand what I'm saying? I'm just testing you, rascal. But I know we'll have to change that, because black people like to be way too sharp to be no damn Sadhu. You know, we like to look good, right? So, okay, we have to make some slight adjustments, but only slight adjustments. We will not tamper with the essence of it. We will not tamper with the essence of it. Like to eat a little bit? No, but we're not going to mess with that food part. That stays in. The food, the sleep, the speech, all of that, that's solid. There's no compromising with that. The materialistic reduction, all right, if you want 5 pairs of clothes, all right, you got to get rid of a couch for me or something. You got to give up something. We'll negotiate. All right, we'll negotiate. But it is really, truly a beautiful, it is a beautiful, beautiful, very, very poetic and very heroic way of living. It really is. It's marvelous. A wonder to behold. A wonder to behold. And if you see some of them Sadhus sitting back up in them caves, you can see their eyes twinkling, sitting way back in there, just twinkling in delight, just happy. You're hard to believe that these people can be so happy with so little, but then you understand. You know what I mean? Then you understand. It's an amazing thing. So if that is the spirit in you, good. 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 So now do something about your transitional stages. That's the work that you get to do. To look at your transitional stage. It's enough in you. I'll marry some of you all off in here. I mean, if you can't figure it out, okay, give it to me. I'll pick you out a husband. I'll pick you out a wife. I'll hook you up. I mean, this is not hard to do. This is not hard. And Maharaji very often would, that's what he did. He would tell, I remember a friend of ours, I know quite a few people that marriages were arranged by the master, you know, and they're still married after 50 years because they consider being married a part of the will of the master and a part of their sadhana. That's a very unique advantage, isn't it? When your guru said, marry this person. Now it turns into sadhana. It's a very different thing. In India, the it was the whole concept of arranged marriages was also based on this kind of deep principle of the respect that the children have for their parents. You know what I mean? And they looked upon them parents as being people who had none but their best interests at heart. Plus, there was so much respect there, right? And so you would marry that person, right? Because you have faith in your parents, you know? But that was never as powerful as the relationships put together by the guru. Because when they entered into those relationships, both people were governed by the guru. And that's a very different modus operandi in relationship. Trust me. Ordinarily, you come in a relationship at the level of your egos. So as long as there's not too much clash at the level of your ego, all right, the thing can work. But the moment those egos start clashing, there's no higher principle to govern you. And in that instant, you tend to collapse into divorce, separation, as the case with most of you. It's not like you single here at this time in your life. It's not like you all ain't been married. You have been married. You simply fail. Let's get real here. You're not innocently single like Saranja or Pooh. They're young. You're single because you have failed. That's why you're single. And some of you have failed more than once. Some more than twice. Now let's get clear about it. I don't want you to be wearing white at your wedding. All right? Because you're no virgin here. You done been here and did this. And you have already found out that you didn't have what it takes. And I'm saying until you deal with overcoming those deficits that cause you and predispose you to fail the first time or the second time, then I doubt very seriously that you're going to have much success in the way of a householder. You've already failed it twice or once or what have you. I mean, what I'm calling you, beloved, is to get real about this thing. Be very serious about it. You've failed as husbands before. And you have failed as mothers before, as wives. Just a few and you haven't had any of that experience. But even if you haven't, you have failed in your share of relationships on the way to the altar. So in either case, what characterizes you, you're failures here. One and all. And you got to deal with that. And you got to find out what is it about you that has caused you to fail repeatedly in your attempts to go the way of the householder. And you got to find out what they are, and you must enter into the ordeal and the yoga of their transcendence. And you will find out in every case there is something very childish about you. That's all that means. So there's no point in getting all defensive or taking it personal. It's not about that, and I'm not necessarily here to mock you. I'm not here to make fun of you. But I am here to get you straight on it, to bring your attention to the great matter of your own inadequacy as demonstrated in your own history for the way of the householder. And to remind you again that if you couldn't make it as a householder, I doubt very seriously if you will make it as a Sadhu. You'll simply fail to do that too, and fail for the same reason. The inability to transcend the gravity of your own ego and selfishness and childishness, your inability to go through pain, your inability to sacrifice, and so forth and so on, your inability to become self-disciplined, so forth and so on. Those same deficits that cause you to fail at the householder way will cause you to fail at the level of the Sadhu. And be very clear about it. Very clear about it. Don't have any kind of fantasies rolling around in your head that, oh, Bhagwan, I failed 3 times in my marriage. It must have been that because I was supposed to be a Sadhu. No.